Hello and welcome back to another Infinity Train rambling review. I'm here to ramble for up to sort of 30 minutes on the subject of the Pig Baby Car episode of Book 4, which I believe is the fourth episode. From my perspective now, it's kind of weird because I've done a bunch of these over the weekend to get ahead because I'm going to have less time in the week. I say a bunch, like I've done four. But the first one has gone up now. So I'm starting to see comments and... someone's pointed out something that's so funny because when I was talking in the last video while we were recording, and not the last video, sorry, the first video when I was recording it, and I mentioned about how 1-1 was kind of like whole. It was like, you know, he's been split. One thought crossed my mind as I was talking. I didn't voice it because I wanted to go double check it, and I was like, I wonder if he's just called 1 now. Like, that would actually make a lot of sense, because when he introduced himself, it's, one, it's the two, it's always, he's 1-1 because there's the two voices, and I wondered if he was just called 1 originally. So, I pondered that, and, lo and behold, one of the first comments, when I completely forgot about it, because obviously, when a thought occurs to you while you're recording, you have to move on quickly because you're constantly trying to make sure you've got something to say with these. And somebody has commented, lo and behold, on the first episode, and I've gone back and double checked, and he is indeed, and it reminded me, and I went and double checked, and he is indeed just as titled as 1, which I thought was neat. Still not sure whether he's going to play much more into this series, but could see him towards the end, I suppose. But at this point, I feel like we're focusing on. I feel like we're very confident. I feel confident that we're really Ryan and Mingy are the focus here, and it'd be a small role if any. I guess he's pretty much shown up at the end of every other season, so actually I'd be kind of stupid to predict otherwise. Yeah, I think probably he will show up at the end because he kind of, generally speaking, does. Either way, though, this episode is the fourth episode, and I really liked this one with one major exception. So we'll talk about it. But for those who don't remember this episode, if you're listening to this in the future, this is the episode where they're in the car where they have to create food for a giant pig baby voiced by J.K. Simmons, which is really weird because I'm watching Invincible right now where J.K. Simmons voices Omni-Man. Quite a different role to Pig Baby. And then we have the French milk creamer. Which is shaped like a cow, who's sort of his matron, mother, very, question mark on that relationship. And basically she's saying that to get through, they're going to have to feed and please Pig Baby, so Min and Ryan start making food. Oh, they're tiny, by the way, I should have explained. He's a giant Pig Baby, and they're in they're tiny in a giant kitchen. And they're basically, there's one cookbook left, and they're trying to cook food to please Pig Baby. In the end, when they make him something that he likes, after sort of working together and Ryan slowing it down a little bit, we'll get into the details, don't worry. There's tons of stuff to talk about in the midst of all that. They eventually find out that no, you don't get to leave when you please Pig Baby. You've pleased Pig Baby, go do it again. Your job is now to continually feed this baby. And there's a really creepy idea when they're like, well, then, when Pig Baby dies, you'll be the Pig Baby, which is super creepy. And also, I think maybe slightly implies by accident. I don't think it's intentional. I think Pig Baby is a Denison, but there is an implication. I could see somebody walking away from this thinking Pig Baby was a former passenger that had become almost a denizen, but I don't think so because of his shape and form. Like, we've never seen a passenger transform into anything. In this realm, they've kept their shape and size, and their physical form hasn't ever been adjusted to my memory. We've seen other denizens, obviously, become other things, but oh no, that's not true. That's not true at all, is it? Because we saw what happened with Simon. And he was just kind of killed. He wasn't turned into a gnome, whatever you want to call those things. He was just kind of melted by one. I don't know. Anyway, they get out and there's a big tease. I think we'll get to my criticism because my criticism is very specifically about the way the episode ended. So we'll come to that if that's okay towards the end, just so I can keep this straight in my head and not go off on tangents too much. On the whole, I think it's a good episode. It gave me what I was looking for, which is more dimensions to their disagreements, because it all seemed a bit tenuous, because it was all just a bit vague. They'd fallen out, we weren't 100% clear on exactly why Mingi had not come along on the trip and had left the band. It was unclear what the rift really was about personally between the two. Obviously, there wasn't. You could apply an explanation if you wanted that Mingi's parents had sort of been pushing him to take his life a little more seriously, and he saw Ryan sort of planning out this adventurous version of his life that contradicted that, and he chose his parents over Ryan, or I don't know. It's all very complicated, but I just thought like the actual like personal animosity just seems to be unclear, because otherwise what we've been told is that they get on like a house on fire and they're like best friends, yet they're at each other's throats, and it just felt like we needed an extra dimension to why their personalities were clashing, beyond the obvious differences in approach to how they want to go forward with their life. What on the day-to-day basis are they actually sort of bumping up against? And this episode lays it out a little bit more clearly, and I thought it was really it was smartly done. I think the characters make a lot of sense, and I think they always did. Don't misunderstand that criticism as a it didn't make sense. It was just that they hadn't gotten to it yet, and it was a question mark that I don't think they could have left much longer. But this episode really sort of explains how their dynamic functions and doesn't function, which is obviously that Ryan is impulsive and carefree, and Mingi is more level-headed and cautious, and that can sometimes lead to them disagreeing about certain things. So this episode lays it out mostly during the montage where they're making the food. So the cookbook is out of reach, and someone says to just jump, and I mean, he's like, well, we can't just jump, we'll die, we can't jump to that thing. And Ryan just leaps, and because of weird Infinity Train gravity, he just floats to the book. And Mingi's like, well, that was really stupid and dangerous. We should have taken our time and thought it through before we just risked things that way. And he's just like, well, I'm with the cookbook and you're down there, so who's winning? And then like when they open the cookbook, there's a lot of really. Mingi wants to do like a nice simple brownie, something simple that they can do well. Whereas Ryan's like, let's do something crazy. Let's push the boat out. Let's really impress. And they keep doing that, and it keeps going wrong. And even the creamer cow is like, what is this stuff you keep making? Like, do something simple. Actually, she puts on like it's like a really overt French accent. It's almost like Nadia and I have a slight running joke. There's a presenter in the UK. He does first dates, and he also does a show called Snackmasters. And we describe his accent as not a French accent, but an outrageous French accent. It's like offensively French. Like, and I don't mean that. I mean like the accent is offensively French. Like if anyone but a French person was doing it regularly, you'd be like, that is basically racism. So I hope this is a French actress, because if it isn't, it is quite stereotypically French. And the presenter in the UK, it's worth noting, is a French, but he just happens to have an accent that is almost matches what the stereotype would be. Anyway, so they I've lost the thread of what I was thinking about altogether. So they so in the end he rejects all that food, and they're sort of forced to so in the end they're sort of forced to make something simple. And when they do that, the number goes down, and that it goes down from like, I think it's like 180 to 172, 180 something to 172, and Min basically decides that means, because he's perceived this as Ryan has learned a lesson about slowing down. He's been quite judgmental of Ryan in this sequence, and in fact in this episode Min comes out quite badly. This is not his shining moment, and I'm sure we'll see the other side as well, and we'll see maybe Ryan look, his flaws, but this is he looks down on Min. It's very clear, and was quick to jump to the assumption that once he had even the slightest bit of evidence that he looks down on Ryan, I should say. I think I said he looks down on Min. Min looks down on Ryan, and it's clear that the second he had anything that he thought was evidence of that, he was jumping down the throat. Oh yeah, so you've learned something. You've learned to slow down. That's what we've learned here. It's you that needs to learn lessons. It's you that's behind. It's you that's, not got your shit together. You're and it's quite hurtful. I mean, he doesn't quite say it's you that's not got your shit together, but he's implying that. And I think Ryan's character is really interesting here because Ryan chooses not to tell him what I think has happened, which is when Min does that, the number goes back up to like in the 200s. And he's like, the lesson mustn't have stuck with you. You must have already sort of forgotten it because look where we are, the number's back up. But don't worry, we'll get there. And Min walks off content with that he's convinced himself he's not the problem. And Ryan looks at his hand and he's like, right. And it's pretty blatant what's happened. I think very clearly, and there's more evidence towards the end of the episode and the very end of the episode, but I think Ryan's number has stayed at 170, and it's Min's that's gone up. Min's has gone up alone for the first time. Their numbers have desynced. So now we're in a situation where we've got two characters, and they seem to be going in different directions. I think what's going to be interesting is I think there's a chance Ryan will get his number down to 0 first, and the door won't appear because they came in through the same door. They have to leave through the same door, so they have to both get their number to 0 to make the door appear. I reckon, if I'm guessing, just general Infinity Train sort of logic. If they've entered together through one portal, they need to leave through a single portal. They don't have individual doors. They're very much linked. They're twins. The twin tapes. They're the same as far as the train is concerned. Their numbers may differ depending on who's learning what lessons when, but they ain't leaving until they're both at 0. That's what I suspect is we're going to get, because that's the best way to do it, to do drama, I think, is to have it so that because their numbers are linked, one is literally holding the other back, because there's a lot of that parallels their real life. Ryan wants to, if Ryan's number gets to 0, the door doesn't come because Min's not caught up yet. He could actually, it could become the argument they're already having. I want to go do music, and I think we'd be really successful together. But your reluctance, your stubbornness, your arrogance almost, is holding me back in that, and it's holding me back here because I want my door, and I can't get my door because you've not caught up. And it'll be interesting to see that flip, because right now Mingi feels like he's in the position of power, and that is, he feels superior. He does. It is proper arrogance at this stage. I just think that's really, I think that's really interesting and quite compelling. It's another way to do two protagonists and not basically have to not copy what we did last year. I remember I think it was in the last episode, I said, they'll probably just get their number down together. But I also remember in the very first episode of this, I said, if their number just gets down together and then they just leave, it's not very exciting. I don't know how interesting that is to me. Whereas now they've set up a situation, I think, where their situation on the train is going to parallel their real life problem as well, which is what the show always does so goddamn well. So yeah, I think this is the trajectory now, which is Min's number going up, Ryan's number going down, and Min having to realize that it's not all Ryan's fault and that there's nothing wrong with being a bit carefree every now and then. So before we get to the criticism, some other elements of this episode that I want to talk about, creative idea-ish. I mean, it's one of those episodes where the idea, they were just like, let's make a really simple, stupid one so that we can actually... Because there's quite a lot going on between Min and Ryan in this episode. So they just needed a simple story that required them to sort of work together and allowed them to demonstrate that one rushes things and one maybe overthinks things. Actually the answer is probably a happy medium, right? Like, you need to be cautious sometimes, but it's also nice to be carefree and impulsive occasionally. Enjoy your life, live it, rather than walk through it cautiously. I feel like of late I'm more of a Mingi than a Ryan, but at different points in my life I've had different experiences, and I've had different sort of attitudes towards these things. But I relate to both, and I do think a balance is actually really hard to achieve between those two things, knowing when to be one and when to be the other. I think it's really interesting that we've got these two characters that are so different. I must admit, as well, with this episode, because it's such a simple premise, and it's just there so to give us a good excuse to explore that, it's perfect. It's pitched perfectly, because if any more complicated, you're taking time out of the other story, which I'm enjoying, and enjoying exploring these characters. And if you make it any more complicated as well, then you've also got the challenge of like making it more interesting. I mean, this is just make good food for the giant pig. It's like, it's not one of those cars where they had to figure out how to get out. They think they know how to get out pretty much straight away, and it turns out there is a slight twist to that. There isn't. The making the food doesn't get them out, but that's it's a simple goal and a simple thrust for the episode, which is exactly what you need for one that takes. It's actually, I think this might parallel. I think it was episode 4 of season 3. 1 second. Book 3, was it the one where they had to kick the turtle? Book 3, episode 4, Infinity Train. Let's just see. No, it wasn't 4. It was episode. Oh, I'm not thinking of book 3. I'm thinking of book 2. They had to kick the turtle. I've got it wrong. Let's quickly check. Yeah, there you go. The Toad Car, book 4. It's exactly the same structure. So this is an episode. So for those who don't remember, the Toad Car episode was book 2's episode, where they were in a room and they could get out of the room as soon as they kicked a toad. But there was a moral quandary of is it fair just to kick this poor toad to get out of the room? And it's so simple, but it allows you to do the exploration. Now this is slightly more involved than that, but it's a similar idea. But what I am thinking is interesting about this series is so far it's been extremely episodic. More so, I think, than any of the other seasons other than the first one. It's kind of I guess that's my point. It's kind of a back to basics season. Things got so complex and full of the lore and ongoing plots that I think this was like the idea of this season was just like, let's have a nice reset fun season before we get back to that stuff. Let's have a less heavy season. Again, that's such a shame that this is where it's ended. I can't express how unfortunate that is for the creative team, because I think this is a really good season so far. Only 4 episodes in, admittedly, but I'm really enjoying it. I like the characters, I like the circumstances. So if you can hear me stirring and drinking my tea, but I do think it'll suffer critically as a result. Time will tell, though. I'm eager to get stuck in with what people think. But to be fair, people have loved the last few seasons. I mean, I think I'm sure it'll mostly be positive feedback because it's Infinity Train and people love this show. But yeah, it's. But I'm sure, as always, there'll be that like vocal minority. It's the way these things usually work. People eager to tell you they didn't enjoy the season, which I think this will be the first time there's a possibility of that. Because every other season, it's just felt so absurdly strong and almost flawless. But I absolutely can see how the positioning of this and the hype for this being the last season has probably led to some people feeling quite disappointed, especially because it's such a back to basics season. Anyway, I'm repeating myself from previous episodes here. So I actually like that. I like that it's kind of back to basics. It's like, was there's an episode where they've got to feed a giant baby? There were no episodes like this in book 3, none whatsoever. It was all very everything had a lot more weight and a lot more stakes to it than this season. I think the closest they got last year, I think they had one episode that was kind of that fit this, which was episode 3, which is the debutante ball car, which is they go into a car and there's essentially a puzzle for them to solve to get out of. The rest of them all dealt with heavy personal stuff and wasn't really about the cars themselves or the adventures of getting in and out of them. So it's a big shift from the previous stories, but I'm on board. I like it a lot. Really enjoyed Kez in this episode. This whole what if I just happen to put this on and wear this and you just start calling me Lorraine? And they're like, who have you upset in this car? And it is interesting, isn't it, how like she is such a chaotic force. Because have we ever had a character that's disliked amongst other denizens? It's so consistent, and it's always over something so silly. It's almost like she's different to other denizens in the way that I always say the cat is kind of different to other denizens. She seems very freewheeling. She seems to have a lot more freedom and a lot more. She's outside of the behavior of the other denizens. She's like the restrictions put on the programming to stop them doing whatever the hell they want. She doesn't have. Right? That's kind of how it feels. It feels like there's a handful of denizens that are kind of a little bit not broken, but just built different, and it feels like Kez is one of them. I can't imagine Atticus, for example, having done this sort of thing. You know, I would struggle to imagine Atticus having traveled through so many cars and caused so much chaos. And it's always something silly, but it's enough to have like led to her being. And it's just such a funny thing that even the other character, like, this is the 4th episode, and the 2 leads are already like, ugh, who hates you in this car, Kez? What did you do? For those who don't remember, if you're listening to this in the future, she melted their butter. She put it in the microwave, turned it on for 5 minutes to get it a little bit softer, and then forgot it was in there, and ruined it in there. It's just she goes around in this entire episode wearing a chef's hat and referring to herself as Lorraine. And then when someone asks her, like, who did she upset, she responds, Lorraine answers to no one. Which I just thought was very good. And there's several jokes, like tipping the chef's hat or something like that. There's loads of like chef-based jokes. And in the end, the way they get out of the car is that they reveal her, which stops Big Baby from chewing because they discover the door is actually in his mouth. And when they reveal that, they jump through into the door because they can't do it while he's eating the food they've provided. And that's how they escape. It's a good plot for Kez in this one because, again, you have to try and, if you're balancing a 10-minute episode of television and you have quite a lot of heavy stuff between Min and Ryan, you just need to think of thin things to have the other stuff there. So Kez's plot in this is simple, reinforces what we already know about her, allows her to be funny for several minutes, also allows them to animate her easier because she's just a floating hat now. She no longer has a mouth moving, so that was probably cheaper. I doubt that. Look, these guys, I'm sure they were they would have been happy to pay for her. But I'm not suggesting they put her in the hat to save money. I'm sure they were leaning towards the obvious creative reason, which is that it's a really fun idea and she's very funny. But I'm sure that it wouldn't have been. I'm sure no one would have been sad at the money saved there as well, not having to keep animating her mouth or work. There's a lot of ease and time saved there where you're not like having to but spend time syncing that up and making sure that the mouth movements match the voice acting and all that stuff. So yeah, and again, it's a really funny gag. It's simple, reinforces who she is. She has a great moment at the end as well when she tries to say that it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, but she sort of does it in that really Kez way. It's not about the destiny something, it's about the whatever. Which I just thought was spectacular dialogue and a really good distillment in a very short space of time of Kez's character. So, yeah, big fan. So my criticism, we should get to this. So, okay. Mingy has been very judgmental in this episode, very assumptive. I think he's been very cruel. Is constantly sort of, in an arrogant way, making assumptions that Ryan is somehow inferior, sort of, and holding him back. He can't see the benefits to being impulsive, and he's sort of, whether intentionally or not, he's putting Ryan down, making Ryan feel small. With saying things like, you can't help it if you've got a lot to learn. Let's hope we don't have to cook again to get your number down. He's just being very inconsiderate of Ryan's feelings. Ryan, at the end of the episode, takes another long look after a conversation like that at his hand, and has a frown, and you're thinking, okay, his number hasn't gone back up. His number is lower than Min's, and he's debating, it seems, whether to say. So my criticism is, show us that. There's no reason not to. You're not going to... It's so obvious. You're not going to be able to make a twist out of it in the next episode because it's very clear. And then not only that, but you put it in the little Cartoon Network card at the end. So for those who don't know or don't look through the credits or watch through the credits, they hit next episode or whatever. At the end of each episode, there's a Cartoon Network logo, and then when the logo shifts aside, there's always a little box with a tiny thing that shows the hand of... it's changed as the seasons have gone on, but I'm pretty sure all of last season it was the hands of the characters. It was Hazel, Grace, and Simon last year, and what their numbers were at the time, each time. It might have done it for the previous seasons and I didn't notice, or I don't remember. It's been a while. But this season it's done the same. And this season it's very clearly Ryan and Min's hands. Ryan's being 200 and something, Min's being 170 something, I think. 171, 172. So why not confirm it in the content of the episode? You've put it in the little... You made it really obvious within the context of the episode. I don't mind them having the subtler one in the middle of the episode where he looks and you're not sure yet. But that final look is very confirmational. Why not then just show it? Because going forward, what a great, ooh, let me watch the next episode sort of moment. He's got a different number. Confirm that there and then. I don't see why we don't cut to a shot of it. And I actually was so confused as to why they didn't. I watched the ending 3 times thinking there was a shot that confirmed it and I had just missed it. But it is not there. I have looked. So yeah, I'm really confused as to that choice. There's just no reason to hide it at that point. It's so obvious. Because you're not going to be able to make a twist out of it in the next episode. So there you go. So Min is on... Minky is on 202 and Ryan's on 172. It looks like. Based on that Cartoon Network Studios logo at the end. So yeah, I don't know. I found that frustrating. I found it not satisfying from a storytelling perspective. I couldn't think of a good reason to have done it the way they've structured it at all. Maybe if they kept it subtler, I could go, oh well, they're saving it because it's a twist, they're going to reveal it, and when you look back you'll go, oh, it was they've been different for an episode or two. But it's just so plain. I thought it before I even saw that end Cartoon Network tag. I was convinced of it, and then when I saw the Cartoon Network tag, I was like, okay, so they've either accidentally spoiled it there, but even if they hadn't, it would still be so clear. So yeah, I would, instead of trying to make it a twist, I would just lean into it and use it as an excuse to generate excitement and intrigue by showing the audience what Ryan knows. Sorry, yeah, I meant Ryan, not Min. And also, I have a real suspicion the next episode's going to pretty much open with him revealing that, because it's going to be hard to hide hip hand unless he does a tulip and finds some gloves or whatever. I just don't know. Yeah, really bizarre choice. In an otherwise quite a good episode, I thought. Reminded me a little of the map car episode from season 2 as well. You know, when they're sort of like it's like that Cloud voiced by Wayne Knight, whose name escapes me, sort of fits the sort of the way they've introduced this antagonist here in the Pig Baby. I thought the Pig Baby itself was a really disturbing image. I thought the cow creamer was kind of funny. I thought, the music in this episode is great, by the way. The montages they have when they're making food, there's this like stereotypical sort of like 80s montage music, and it's so much fun. It's a really good piece of music, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, so a thoroughly enjoyable episode with quite a frustrating end. Some really good character work that's got me intrigued, but again, a really weird choice. So we'll see where it goes. I'm very in. I have so far so good. That choice, that ending really bothered me. I guess I'll understand it more if in the next episode they don't reveal it till the end. He keeps it secret somehow. But even if you show him putting on a glove or something, that's gonna confirm it anyway. So who are you keeping it a secret from? I don't understand. I don't understand why you wouldn't just make it clearer. Because you've not made it subtle enough to be a twist, but you've not made it clear enough to be a thing that absolutely everyone will walk away to out of the episode knowing. So it's a really unconvinced with that. But on the whole, I still think positive experience with that one. So stick with us. We got 6 more episodes left to go. I'm kind of sad. Only 6. Sad about this. But yeah, the next episode we'll have tomorrow, I guess. There's another podcast for me to put up. There was a small break, I think, between episode 2 and episode 3 because we had a Rewind reviews to go up. I think it was the Power Rangers one, which is a lot of fun. Check that out if you can. So yeah, thanks very much for listening, guys. I'll be back to ramble some more tomorrow on episode 5. But in the meantime, I've been Dan Dillon. I'll see you guys next time when we discuss the Astro Q car. I don't think I've ever done the I've been Dan Dillon thing that we do on the other podcast. It's weird when there isn't a second person to say their name. I'm not going to do that again. Awkward. I'll just say thanks for watching and I'll see you on the next one. It's better, innit?